Welcome to Move Your Mind. My name's Nick Bracks, and this is a podcast where we have real conversations with real people and give real advice. A supportive group environment is powerful. It provides a space where you can shed the weight of societal expectations, unmask your vulnerabilities, and tap into your emotions. As a group, you can support each other to confront your fears, insecurities, and unresolved conflicts. And by sharing in your experiences, your challenges, and your aspirations, a support group provides a sense of camaraderie, unity, and shared purpose that can lead to personal growth, finding your purpose, and re-establishing values and boundaries. My next guest has dedicated himself to providing these kind of spaces to empower individuals from all walks of life. Jacob Fishbein is an executive coach and facilitator who specialises in helping people and teams make and navigate their most pressing choices. He's passionate about helping men and women to make proactive decisions while pushing their endeavours forward in a purposeful and powerful way. So nice to meet you. Thanks so much for making the time to come on my podcast.
Absolutely, Nick. It's great to be here.
So before we jump in, would you be able to give a bit of a background on yourself and the work you're currently doing, just so our listeners can learn a bit about you?
Absolutely. So my name's Jake Fishbein. I'm a New York City-based writer and executive coach and facilitator. I originally grew up in Santa Fe, New Mexico, which is a small town, not too small, but a small-ish town, the capital of New Mexico out west. And I've been doing the work that I do now for the last 5 years. I didn't ever expect that I'd be an executive coach and facilitator. Definitely thought I'd be a writer. That's something that's been with me since I was a small kid. But I got into this work almost by happenstance when my first career after college was in public relations, and I hated it. And I learned a ton. I have so much gratitude for my boss during that time, but it was not my world. And I got into this work via a friend of a friend of a friend who recommended I do a series of workshops and work with a coach. And the workshops changed the way I looked at the world. And the coach that I hired, he became my mentor. We've been working on a novel together about a men's group for the last 7.5 years, which is so close to being done, 1 yard from the finish line. And it was really through the work with him, his name's Nick Papadopoulos, also a Nick, that I fell in love with coaching and with men's work and with helping people. In my mind, it's helping people find home, a place where they can trust themselves to take risks, to be authentically self-expressed, to really feel the fullness of who they are so they can feel fully alive and be proud of the choices that they're making.
Amazing. I love that. And there's so many topics in that to explore. And I think, the topic of men as well, like you're saying there, we need the work that we need people like you doing this kind of work, because there's just not enough support there. And a lot of men want to explore these kind of things, but they don't know where to go. So I think it's just such an important thing. Is that what you found through doing this work, that there's been a real, hunger for it with men to find that guidance?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think that I've seen it change. I've been in a men's group for almost 8 years and been working on this book for almost 8 years. And in that time, I've seen it change the men that are gravitating towards men's groups. When I joined my first group, the Dudes of Disruption, which I'm still in, when I was 24 years old. And everybody in the group was 10 to 15 years older than I was. And now I run a group myself with Nick called the Arena Men's Group. And we have everyone from 29 to 74 in that group.
Wow.
And I'm seeing younger men gravitate toward this, which I wasn't seeing when I first joined. I mean, I would talk to my friends and they kind of looked at me like I was crazy. And I understand that I definitely see a thing with men that in their mid 30s to mid 40s to early 50s, they reach this point and realize, holy crap, I'm not fulfilled with my life.
Yeah.
I haven't spent my life doing what's important to me. I've done what everybody else told me to do, and I'm unfulfilled. And oh, by the way, I don't have relationships with other men.
Yeah.
And that leads men to gravitate towards men's groups. But I'm seeing a shift in that now, where I think men are just more younger men. I think younger generations are a little bit more predisposed to having these conversations about mental health and fulfillment. And so they're getting there earlier of, oh, I don't have what I want.
Yeah.
I want support in a different way. Or, one of the guys in the arena is someone who's one of my best friends. I've known him since we were 6. And he originally signed up just because I asked him, because I wanted to share what I was doing with him. And he's been in the group for almost 4 years. Geez, the group's almost 4 years old. And so I think that there are many men out there who don't know that they don't know how valuable being in a group with other men doing this type of personal development work would actually add to their life.
Yeah, massively. You don't know what, you don't know these things until you experience them. And it's hard to sort of have that hindsight until you've actually gone and taken that step. So yeah, I think it's such an important thing. And what was the main driving force when you got into this work? You're saying you had a different idea originally of the path you would go down. Was there a main catalyst or a few, key things that really made you realize, okay, this is my calling, this is the path I want to go down?
There were a couple things, and I mean, for most of my life, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Well, I should caveat that when I was a kid, I wanted to be a paleontologist, of course. And then when I was in high school, I loved Greek history, and I still do. And I wanted to be a historian of a particular era of Greek history, the Bronze Age, and kind of realized that I didn't really want to go to college to specialize in Bronze Age Aegean history. There wasn't necessarily a career in that. And so when I went to college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And my 2 best friends, one wanted to be a doctor and the other wanted to be a professor. And they knew from a very young age what was for them. And I used to joke, I'll figure it out sometime in the next 50 years. And my dad had always told me, he said, you don't want to wake up at 40 doing a job an 18-year-old wanted to do. And I really took that to heart, which was, I don't need to know right away, but I also had no idea. And I felt a lot of pressure to figure it out right away. And so when I first found coaching and personal development, it was in line with the things I'd already been thinking about. I've always been a writer. I had a food blog for many years called The Food Travels of a Coffee Snob, which was really the stories of meals and somehow tying those stories to lessons about life and how to live and reflecting in a more philosophical way. So I've always been asking questions, and that's what coaching ultimately is the work of asking questions to help people learn. And I discovered coaching, like I said, I took a workshop that I thought was a career development workshop, which was definitely not a career development workshop, and had me confront the things that I didn't know, and the blind spots I had about my own life. And I just fell in love with that work, that discovery. Discovery has always been something that has really driven me. And I mean, to be fair, I joined my first men's group, the Dudes of Disruption, because Nick wanted to write a book about a men's group. And I was like, yes, let's do it. And I thought, if I'm going to write a book about a men's group, I should probably be in a men's group. And
so you've gone full method on this. You've gone
really full method. Exactly. I completely immersed myself in it and fell in love with it in the process. But I know a lot of men come to men's work because of a deep wound, because like Nick came to this work to heal his relationship with his father who'd passed away. And I know other men come when they've gone through a really challenging divorce, or they've realized, like I was speaking earlier, that they're not living the life they want to live. And for me, it was not those reasons. I'm lucky to have a really strong relationship with my father and to have great male role models and to have always had close male friends. But there is something still in this work that has so lifted me up. And in turn, I've seen how powerful it can be for men in general to surround themselves with a community of men and have conversations that men don't normally have.
Absolutely. No, I think that's fantastic. And what would be what would you say to men that are, lacking purpose, lacking meaning, that they've got to that point in their life where, they're in their 30s, 40s, and they've realized, shit, I don't really know what I want. I'm not liking what I'm doing, and they feel stuck. And I think that's the one of the biggest things when you feel stuck and you don't know where to go. It can be pretty horrific, and it can lead to drugs and a whole range of coping mechanisms. What would you say to someone going through that?
One, the first thing is you're perfect exactly where you are. It's
Mm,
where you are. And if you're stuck, you're stuck. Like, almost enjoy the stuckness.
mm,
Like, give yourself permission to be right there. Because only when you accept and acknowledge this is where I am, can you actually begin finding a pathway away from that.
yeah.
So that's where I'd start. Of just like, you're perfect. Like, got it. You feel stuck. It sucks. I've been there. Be there for a moment. And then find community. Don't try to figure it out alone. Go talk to people. Go figure out what you enjoy. Go begin actually investigating, why do you want to be stuck? Because one of my mental models is that when we're in a certain state, it's because we want to be there. Not consciously all of the time, but I know that when I've been stuck, it's because I was afraid of the responsibility of being unstuck. I was afraid of
Uh-huh.
making the wrong choice. And so it was way more comfortable and easy for me to be stuck than it was for me to be unstuck. And I think that, like, connecting to that for any men, if you're stuck, it's like, why do you want to be where you are? And if you
Yeah.
have a reaction like, Jake, you don't know what you're talking about, I'm going to ask you to, like, trust that process. Because if you're there, there's a reason you want to be there. And I think
Yeah.
that's like the starting point is really getting clear on what does the starting line look like? Because until you know where you are, how can you possibly figure out where you want to go?
Totally. And our mind will trick us to, we'll feel like there's a million reasons why we can't do it. And it really is all coming down to a pretty simple thing, that we're just afraid of the uncertainty and taking that step. So I think just acknowledging that, and again, it's why these men's groups are so important, because I've been in this mental health space for about 13 years now, and really it stemmed from just sharing my story, and everything I've done's been in that realm. And I think that's how we can relate to other people. When we hear other people's stories, we find that they're going through similar things that we're going through. It just helps us to realize that, there's nothing unique about what we're actually going through. Everyone has their own version of it, but the world's designed in a way to make us feel the opposite a lot of the time.
Yeah, and I think we were talking about this a little bit before about Zoom and how we've gone so far in the direction of everything virtual in the last 3.5 years for obvious reasons, and to a lot of benefit. But I look at our world and I see us becoming increasingly individualized, increasingly
Yeah.
self-reliant. Not really self-reliant, because if technology went away, so many people would be completely screwed. But from the sense of, I can go through my life without interacting with another human all day.
Yeah.
I can get done what I need to get done. As a coach, I need to have a Zoom call with somebody, but I can go to the grocery store and check out without talking to anybody. I can book an airline, a flight, and don't have to converse with anyone. I can walk down the street and get a coffee and not have to talk with anybody. And there's been a lot of research that's done that healing happens in community, and
Yeah.
humans are social. And that as we increasingly divest from human interaction and lean into technology, we're seeing the massive impact on mental health, where it's so important to surround yourself with people versus just using technology to fill the hole. It's that
Yeah.
quick fix, but it's not a sustainable way of healing and growing and learning and developing.
Yep. And I think we're more addicted to, so many different things than we realize. I think almost all of us in some capacity have some level of addiction, whether it be to social media, to work, to whatever it is. And I guess that's another question. Is that something that comes up a lot in your work, and like addiction and understanding it? Because we understand that drugs, alcohol, the things that we're being told are the normal addictions are there, but then there's so many other ones that we just don't even realize we're using as coping mechanisms.
Totally. Something that comes up so often.
Yeah.
Everything from drugs and alcohol and porn and sex. But frankly, those are the ones that come up least frequently. We talk
Right.
a lot about addiction to working out, or addiction to work, or addiction to television. Or the big one that we actually talk about a lot in our groups is addiction to drama,
Mm.
addiction to the chaos that people are looking to escape and prove their stories right about the world so frequently. And that's an addiction that as humans, we're addictive beings, and we're constantly looking to escape from the challenges of our existence. And addiction helps us do that. I remember a few years ago, one of the guys in the arena group, he decided to take a month off drinking. And he asked who else wanted to join in. And a few guys did. And I'm the facilitator, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it too. And I know for me, drinking's not really an issue. I drink occasionally. I'm not a big drinker, but television was how I disconnect. And addiction is a way of disconnecting. And so I said, okay, for 2 months, I'm not going to watch TV.
Wow.
And it was amazing. It was really a freeing experience. And then I got COVID at the end of it and spent the first, I think, 7 days of COVID not watching TV. And at the end, I was like, I can't. Like, I have to watch some. I have to. Like, sick as a dog on my couch. But for all of us, there are the ways we go to disconnect.
Yeah.
And so many of them are not the obvious alcohol and drugs, but something that seems seemingly healthy, that is
Yeah.
actually just our way of disconnecting from our experience and the people around us.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, please click the subscribe button, leave a like or comment, share with your friends, and follow me on Instagram at Nick Bracks. I really appreciate your ongoing support. 100%. And what were some of the things that came up for you when you did go through that and you cut that out? Because it's so difficult to do those kind of things and really just be okay with being still, being bored, allowing things to come up. It's really difficult.
Yeah, it was a tough period. I know I'm really good when I choose to do something and commit to it, I will do it. So there wasn't any point where I was sitting there, I was like, oh, I've got to get my fix. Like, I never had that experience, but it did require me to sit with a lot of uncomfortable emotions. And I had a challenge with a friend not too long before that, and was sitting in a lot of guilt around what happened between she and I, and regret, and overthinking. And I think it's so important as people, but especially as men, to create that space to sit with the discomfort, to confront. I mean, it's the same thing as that stuckness we were talking about before. It's like anytime there's an unpleasurable experience, sit with it. And I mean, it's been 2 years since I did that fast, and there have been plenty of times where I've been feeling not so great, and I've turned on the television, because it's easier to disconnect than it is always to sit with. And there is value in avoiding sometimes. That I remember at the beginning of COVID listening to a webinar by Dr. Tal Ben Shahar of the Happiness Studies Academy, and he was sharing the 5 keys to resilience. And one of them is avoidance. That when you're going through a challenging period, you sometimes do need to disconnect from it. But like anything, when you're intentional with that and you do it for a short period of time, it can be powerful. It's when that becomes the norm and it becomes the coping mechanism, and you never confront the thing you're disconnecting from, that's when it becomes a real big issue.
Yeah. That's such a good point. It really is. So, do you feel like in, I guess, the world we're in now, like, how big of an issue has it become where men almost now feel like they don't know how to be a man? I guess there's it's great that there's been a lot of conversation with on the other side of the spectrum, but I think a lot of the woke movement's almost gone too far, where men don't even know, how to behave, or what if they say the wrong thing. So then a lot of the time they're just shutting down and choosing not to participate at the chance of, if they do express themselves, that they'll be cancelled or that they'll say something wrong or be judged. Is that a big thing that comes up?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's interesting. In the group itself, I wouldn't say that comes up all that frequently, but when I look at the world, I see it all over the place.
Yeah.
And I know with my own experience as a younger man growing up in different times, it's been challenging to know what does it mean for me to be a man?
Yeah.
And I remember in college being in a social, political science class, and we were talking about feminism and reading the books from the middle of the 1900s. Geez, feels weird to say the 1900s. It makes it sound like it was a long time ago. The 20th
Yeah.
century, I'll say that, the 20th century. And I remember all of the women in the class were speaking and all of the men were silent. And I remember sitting there thinking, I can't say anything because if I say something, it's gonna be like turn into this huge mess.
Mm.
I feel like that's become more in the past few years. And I know even with dating, I'm really lucky. I met a wonderful woman about 5 months ago. It's a great relationship. So I'm no longer dating. But when I was dating before meeting her, there was this uncertainty of how am I supposed to act as a man?
Yeah.
Am I
Yeah.
supposed to pay for the first date? If I don't want to, is that okay? Am I supposed to be directive and just make choices? Am I supposed to allow for her to choose? And what I've learned in a lot of experimentation and trying different things and is that at this point, there's so many different versions of femininity, of masculinity, that it's really on an individual basis. It's like one
Yeah.
person prefers this and another person prefers that. There is no uh like cut and dry rigid rules of this is who we should be, which I think is a good thing. That it gives the room for each of us to choose who do we want to be as men. If you're a woman, who do you want to be as a woman? And
Yeah.
I was on a podcast, I guess a few weeks ago with someone, and she was saying, she works with some male clients, and they're saying, they want to hold doors open for women and pay for the first date, and they're like getting yelled at. They're like, well, what should they do? And I don't remember what I said in the moment, but I was thinking afterwards, and I was thinking, if someone wants to do that, if someone wants to hold the more traditional male roles, go for it. Like if that's who you are, like you get to be that. No one can take that away from you. But you have to be willing for people not to like that.
Yeah.
And if they don't like that, it's probably not your person.
Yeah.
That's good news. And it goes to the other side. If you don't want to fall into those traditional male roles, great. Like go be you. And some people aren't going to like that. And if they don't, they're probably not your person. And there is this addiction in men, I think, to being liked.
Yeah.
And I think it's really it gets in the way of everything because most people aren't going to like you. Most people aren't going to like me. Most people aren't going to be my people. And that's a really hard pill to swallow at times. But it gives the freedom to then show up as, well, people are going to judge me anyway. I might as well be who I am.
Exactly. And that it's more perpetuated than ever because of social media and wanting this addiction, I think male and female, to just wanting validation and then being in echo chambers where you're just trying to get validated by like-minded people, and then you can't handle it in real life to be exposed, your real thoughts and feelings if you're in a situation like you're talking about there where you could be judged for it. So then you either don't say anything or you show a different version of yourself. And I think it's like you're saying there, it's a real problem, and it's something we need to learn, that no matter who you are, it's impossible to have everyone like you. And the people that are going to stay in your life are going to be, going to have much stronger connections if you can be yourself.
Yes.
And it's okay, no one's going to be, there's no one size fits all.
There's not. And there never can be. And that's very freeing to recognize you get to be you, Nick. I get to be me. And we're going to
Yeah.
find our people. And inside of that, I really believe, and this is something I want to see more of in the world, that even when we don't find our people, we still get to be respectful. We still get to be honorable. We still get to be empathetic. We still get to strive to understand those that don't like us.
Exactly. That's a real problem where it's actually so healthy to be able to interact and have different views and be around people that might have opposing values to us. And we don't have to agree with them. We don't have to choose to be their best friend, but we should actually have the mindset where we're open to what they're talking about and we're trying to learn from that. And that might help us inform our own view or find, a new standing on where we are. And I think that's the biggest problem, with where the world's gone, this polarization and just these extremes. It's so unhealthy, and there's no, the answer's always somewhere in the middle. And I think we just need to learn to be okay with that, to be able to connect with more people, not isolate ourselves.
Absolutely. It's such a challenge. I mean, everything's polarized.
Yeah.
And the world's not polarized. It's a soup. It's everything. It's the answer, as you say, lies somewhere in the middle. And there's such an opportunity for us as humans and as people to operate in that middle, in that gray, in the soup, without our righteousness of being right. Because the truth is, but none of us know. None of us have the answers.
No.
I do a lot of facilitation work, and I run a facilitator training program with a really good friend of mine. And one of our two of our core modules, our core pillars of facilitation, one of them is inclusivity and belonging, and the second is unlocking collective wisdom. That in inclusivity and belonging, that in order for people to feel like, people need to feel safe in order to get to their next level. And I always say safety doesn't mean everyone agrees with you. It doesn't mean there's no conflict. Safety actually means that you feel so at home and at peace that you can engage in healthy conflict, where you can disagree and know nobody's going anywhere. And that's so important, because then you can hold the space for opposing viewpoints and have a real conversation and actually get to somewhere, not just agree to disagree, because that doesn't really solve anything, but to set aside our own egos and look at, well, what's the solution in the middle? Like, what's actually good for the whole, not just our own righteousness. And that goes into this idea of unlocking collective wisdom, which is, in the past, the best leaders were the ones that had all the answers. The few who had all the answers. And as we go into a future that's increasingly emergent and uncertain, I mean, everything from economically to climate wise, we don't know what's going to happen. Our predictive models are predictive. We're going into an emergent world that's volatile and uncertain and ambiguous and complex, that the best leaders are going to be the ones that ask the best questions to unlock the wisdom of the group. And the wisdom of the group can't rely on righteousness. It has to rely on that openness and looking towards something bigger than ourselves, versus just wanting the validation, as you were talking about, that my point of view is correct.
Yeah, and it feeds into to everything to do with that area, like we were talking about at the beginning, of this fear of choosing to be out of our comfort zone and try and identify what we really want, or take that risk and, do what we really want, because we've got this fear that if we do that, things might not be okay and we might not cope, or we might fall apart. And it's having the comfortability that no matter what you do, even if things don't go well, you're going to be okay. And you've got the support around you, and you know that your innate values enough that no matter what, you're okay. You're fine as you are, because that's so freeing. Then you can go and, explore whatever you want to explore. You can go down any path. So, super important. So I've got one more question, then we finish with these 5 closing questions. So you're talking about this novel that you guys are writing, 7 years in the process. 2 parts of this question. How have you stayed patient through that process? And I can relate on a small level. I'm involved in the film and TV industry, and I've been working on a script that I'm trying to get turned into a TV show, and we're 2 years in, so we're very small, like very small compared to your time frame, but it's really hard when you're passionate about these things to stay to be patient. So how do you stay patient in that, and in general, how do you manage the different parts of what you're doing?
So it's such a great question. And there are two ways that I've stayed patient. One is being really connected to the purpose behind writing the book, which is to help people, to inspire men to trust themselves and to
Yeah.
create more meaningful relationships. And just like staying connected to that purpose and knowing this isn't just about me.
Mm.
It's about Nick, who I'm writing it with. It's about the world.
Yeah.
That like that's a trick you can use for anything, is like stay connected to why you are doing this, to
Yeah.
why this matters. And the second part is what really worked for me was just enjoying the process, like seeing the process as the result. That there were guys in the men's group who'd be like, when is it going to be done? And I'd sit there and be like, when you write a friggin' novel, like you tell me how fast it takes.
Yeah.
Art is one of those things that it's not about the finished product. It's about the journey of creating it and the insights and the learning that actually come from the joy of creation. And
Yes.
so for me, I just loved writing it. And I loved the discovery that I went on, and what I learned about myself, and what I learned about men, and what I learned about my friends and the relationships that are important to me. Because even though it's a novel, I used it as a healing tool to process and learn about challenging relationships in my life. And there were definitely times where it's like, I just want to be done.
Yeah.
And then I'd go right back into the process and just fall in love with the process again. So not being attached to the outcome,
I love that.
just
Such
seeing
a
the
great answer.
value of, and you can apply that to anything.
Mm.
We are a society that is addicted to outcomes and results.
Yeah, productivity, outcomes, results, and I love that. I got inspired listening to that answer, because I mean that's what I love about anything in the creative world, and what attracted me originally to pursuing acting and being in that world. I was loving it because it was the first time I found something where it was just about doing it for the sake of doing it. There literally is no way to compare it to what someone else is doing. There's no finish line. The goal is to get to the end of your life and still be learning and growing. And there's no finish line with it. Whereas we're taught in society, it's about, how do I be more productive? How do I make more money? How do I keep, moving up, 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 up? And it's just debilitatingly stressful. It's not enjoyable, and you can't. It's very hard to enjoy the process when that's what your mindset is driven by.
Yeah. And the only finish line we have is death. And
Yeah, exactly.
as you're speaking now, because I always think that like the way we go through the world, when we talk about our men's groups, it's like the men's group is a metaphor for your life.
Yeah,
You could look at your goals are a metaphor for your life. And so if you're someone who's just addicted to the result, or in our society, we're addicted to the result, to the outcome, to the productivity, you might extrapolate that to say that when we look at the scope of our lives, we're way more concerned with death than we are with living, because death is the outcome.
yeah,
All of us are going to experience that. So how do we enjoy where we are? How do we be fully alive regardless of the outcome?
yeah, yeah. It's so powerful. And if you can have that mindset, it's a reminder. If you remind yourself that simple fact that's scary but true, we're all going to die, then how do you actually want to spend today? Forget about everything else. How do you want to spend this day, if you, with the knowledge that you're going to die, and every day is, an opportunity to live your life in a way that is according to your actual values, and that, makes you
Yeah.
happy. And yeah,
And tomorrow's not promised to any of us.
yeah,
We don't know that we have tomorrow. We pretend that we do, but
yeah,
we don't. And so how to be fully alive each day, knowing that that's going to look different every day. And fully alive does not mean like taking names and kicking butt, and like it's different for everybody.
Exactly. Well, we've got a few minutes left here, so I've got these 5 closing questions. These can be sort of quick answers, whatever comes to mind for you, and try not to throw you too far under the bus here. They're pretty straightforward,
Alrighty.
but we'll see. So the first one is, what's the best childhood memory that comes to mind for you,
Oh man, the first
or one of the best?
one of them, speaking of screenplays, when I was about 8, my dad and I went to DC for a trip together, and we watched about half of Mission to Mars and hated it and decided we could write a better movie. So we spent the next 2 years every Sunday, when my brother was at Hebrew school and my mom was teaching it, we spent it writing a screenplay called The Severin Zone, which was about a mission to Mars.
Oh,
And
wow.
like we wrote a whole screenplay, like 130
Wow.
pages. We submitted it to Robert De Niro's film festival. It did not get picked up. But that is such a sweet memory of spending that time with my dad and really creating my first real partnership in a creative project.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast and want to learn more, I've released my first book, Move Your Mind: How to Build a Healthy Mindset for Life, where I talk about my own journey with mental health and share tips from experts on how to maintain a healthy mindset. You can buy the book on Amazon or through my website at nickbracks.com/book. And what an amazing gift from your dad. I mean, a lot of parents won't, go to that length with their kid, and that's giving you, that experience and that sort of that knowledge that, you can go and try and follow whatever it is that you're passionate about. I think it's just such an important thing for parents to do. So I love that. What do you think is currently the biggest burden on mental health in society?
Oh my goodness. I mean, there's so many ways I could answer this,
Yeah.
but I think technology, honestly. And I think that includes everything from social media to automatic checkouts to when you call a company and you have to go through 17 button clicks to talk to a human being, and the increasing use of AI, that all of this is disconnecting us from our humanity and human interaction. And as we were talking earlier, community is how we heal.
Yeah.
And I think these devices offer immense opportunity and can certainly aid in a lot of mental health stuff, but at the same time are really disconnecting us from each other and from ourselves. And I think we don't know what the impact of that will be on generations to come. And I can't imagine it's going to be good.
No, and I couldn't agree more. And like you said, we really don't know. Well, kids now are growing up with a device in their hand, and we don't have the data yet to see what the long-term impact of that is. So it's pretty scary, and something needs to change.
Yes, agreed.
What is your personal definition of happiness?
For me, it's being fully alive. And at the end of the day, at the end of the year, at the end of your life, looking back proud of the choices you made.
Love that. What's your biggest fear?
Oh boy. For me, I know the fear that's often there, and it's an irrational fear, but it's constant. It's been with me since I was a kid, is not doing it right.
Mm-hmm.
Is making a big mistake, is like missing something. And I think about my career sometimes and worry, I'm not as far along as I want to be or I should be. Or, had I only gone a different route, it would be different.
Yeah.
And so this fear of one of my core stories, just empowering beliefs, is that I make bad choices.
Mm-hmm.
And as much work as I've done, those stories don't go away. And that still sticks with me sometimes, that, I make bad choices. I will make a mistake.
Yeah. And it's perfectionism, a lot of that. And I can relate to it so much. And I love what you said there about, you do the work on yourself. The stories don't go away, but what you learn is you can choose whether you want to buy into that story or not. And the more you can, move away from that story, it might stay there, but it won't have that same power over you. And you'll realize it's not true. We don't have to believe all of these stories.
Exactly. And I always think those stories, I made those up for a reason. We all did, to protect, they made it up to protect myself. And it worked until it
Yeah,
stopped working. So it's like how to have compassion for that story as a part of who I am, um,
I love
to,
that.
to like become friends with it. And there are times where it's really loud and it's hard to remember that it's not true.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. That's really powerful. Well, final one here. What are you most proud of?
Oh, I mean, I could talk for a long time on that. Right now, what I'm most proud of, and there's so many things over the course of my life that I have pride in, but I'm
Yeah,
really proud of this new relationship I'm in, that it took a long time to be open again to being in a relationship. And I'm really proud of not giving up on that and remaining open and continuing to put myself out there and being willing to be fully myself with my girlfriend and for the relationship we're building. That it's really exciting, and I'm excited, and I'm proud of myself and for us of where we are.
that's great. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I wish we had more time. I've loved this chat with you. Where can we send our listeners if they want to learn more about you?
Absolutely, Nick. Well, one, it's been an absolute pleasure being on with you today. I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope there are more in the future. People can find me in a couple different places. I'm on Instagram at the Coach Jake. To be fair, I don't post very much. I think if you've listened to this, you can tell my feelings on social media. Uh, but you can find me at jakefishbein.com or at thearenaseries.com. And that's where all the good stuff on the men's group is.
All right, great. Well, we will put all of those links in the show notes. So anyone listening, please make sure to check it out. And Jake, so great chatting to you. And yeah, I'd love to stay in touch and do this again sometime soon.
Absolutely, Nick. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much to Jacob Fishbein for joining me today for Move Your Mind. Also, a huge thank you to those of you listening. I really appreciate your support. If you'd like to learn more or connect with me personally, visit www.nickbracks.com or send me a DM on Instagram at nickbracks. Please don't forget to click the subscribe button, leave a like or comment, share with your friends, and follow me on Instagram. It really makes a difference. Thank you so much.